And we are back with another book review. My name is Robert Frederick, and this is History Thesis. Today's book, we will be talking about The Market Revolution by Charles Sellers. Let's see what Sellers is selling. First off, let's do my favorite thing, and that's judge a book by its cover. The nice red color, the title itself seems pretty blah. There's nothing about the market that makes me go, oh, I want to read this. I do actually kind of enjoy economic history, but that's more because it deals with the way we think about money and government. In the back of here, this big old long script on how brilliant this book is with a bunch of one-liners. You notice that? Brave, brilliant, a pleasure to read, fresh. In fact, Eric Foner, which if you've taken a college course in history, American history, you have probably likely read Eric Foner. He is, well, the textbook guy. I mean, most people use the Eric Foner textbook. A fresh and persuasive account. And what does that tell me? Is it good? And most of these just don't say anything specific, and makes me think that a lot of people didn't actually want to read the 427 pages. It's a long book, and it's a dry book. There's no way around that. I'm going to say right away, Market Revolution, I feel like, is a Marxist term. And so that's kind of the first thing I think when I see this title. None of this really indicates that from the back of the book. Could be promising. I always like to take some time to read up on the author or the book or something like that. Whether that's, I prefer to read up on the book after I've read the book. I prefer to read up on the author before I read the book. That way it helps contextualize a little bit more of what to expect. A little bit about Charles. He was educated in the 50s. He went to Harvard, taught at Berkeley, published this book in 91, which tells you that's pretty late in his career. Interestingly enough, he was arrested in 1961. Now, why is that important? Well, I mean, he was arrested as a freedom writer. Where does that bring us in this book? Well, let me give you a few keywords, and you guess what type of scholarship this book is. We're going to start with antinomialism, and Arminianism, patriarchy, capitalism, Jacksonianism, bourgeois, and you guessed it, Marxism. This book falls into the Marxist scholarship. One of the hallmarks of the Marxist scholarship is that, as Marx states in the manifesto, that all history is the history of class struggle. Now, part of this is that he's borrowing from Hegel's idea of the dialectic. Now, don't fall asleep on me, but that deals with three fundamental ideas. That is the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. That is the idea of these competing ideas, competing problems in society, and how these things clash and work themselves out in what he refers to a dialectic. Now, this ends up being one of the big things that Marxism latches onto. And so most Marxist history deals with history as a class struggle, or that there's at least two conflicting groups in society. That leads into probably one of the first problems I have with this book. It begins with the idea of early America and its formative culture, and coming from these Puritans who move over to America, bringing with them Calvinism. This develops into what he regards as a patriarchal religion, and honestly, he doesn't quite grasp religion at this time. There's a few things in the beginning of the book where he, believes that there's some sort of magical, mystic, influences in, the farmer Christian culture. If he had a stronger foundation on exactly Arminianism and Calvinism and history, I think that he would have structured a lot of this book differently, because he does this kind of, thesis antithesis of antinomialism and Arminianism, though theologically those are much more closer together. I wouldn't say that they're the same, but they're closer in theology, because Calvinism is on this side of the spectrum, Arminianism is on this side of the spectrum, and Calvinists tend towards a little more legalism, and the Arminians more towards an antinomialism. Anyways, this is not a lecture on theology, so let's get back to the book. Now, that's one of the big problems, is people don't seem to understand religion and history, and that tends to be the part where everything falls apart, because it's a fundamental building block of society and culture, and if we don't understand that right, well, then we don't understand history. Nature within the American society that was against capitalism, and yet it was capitalism that was pushed on and foisted into society through lawyers and judges and legislation and all this stuff that happened. And ultimately it was the Jacksonians who contended with that idea, and eventually lost the battle. The problem with that, the problem with dealing with history as this kind of dichotomy between two different groups, that there is nothing but class struggle, is that's not how the past is. Things are not that simple. It goes beyond just somebody's position in some sort of economic standpoint. It neglects this idea of the nature of the past, or the natural outgrowth of things. At some point there is a synthesis. This is one of the fundamental problems with Marx. Marx believed that everything was class struggle, and that it was only going to resolve by a struggle. And whether that is something that is foisted upon people, well, really that was the cause. It was to charge people to take out to the streets, take up the problem, and force it to be fixed according to your own will, or the will of the people. A lot of the stuff that we have that are really good about our economy, really good about the way that people work. The fact that we've got health benefits, that we've got unions that protect people, and it's a love-hate relationship with those unions. Those things had their positive influence really led on by the Marxists in history. The reason why Marxism hasn't ever taken America is because he neglected the fact that people eventually work out their differences. And much of history is just that, people working out their differences. And that's where his book has the biggest struggle. It simplifies things too easily. It ignores other things, and it creates a dichotomy in society, and really argues for and makes a champion of one group over the other, when things are popular, and things come and things go, and that's how history is. Now, what causes those things? Well, that's the debate of scholarship. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to call this book, out of 10, scholarship-wise, this is a solid 3. It's not the worst that I've had. There's a number of things. There's something to be learned from everything, and though I think that he's off on his basis in quite a bit of this, there are some things that you can glean and go, oh, that seems like a really good rabbit hole. I'd like to chase down that idea at some point. And take it for what it is. I'm not recommending it, but feel free to pick it up yourself. Make your own judgment. Or as the famous words of LeVar Burton, don't take my word for it. Until next time, stay tuned. I will have more books in American history. Remember, I've got about 20 books that I've got to read, and that's not even including the medieval history. Live well, live wisely. Peace out.